Hello there, and welcome to Sleepless Scrolls. It's late, isn't it? Or maybe it's early. Either way, you're here, and I'm here. And together, we're about to drift through time, through shadowy streets and hushed chambers, through ancient thoughts and stranger remedies. This is the kind of story that doesn't need to be finished to be felt. One that travels not in leaps and plot twists, but in footsteps, in sighs, in scent. Tonight we're walking into the hazy world of medieval medicine. Not the battlefield surgery or leeches, though there may be a few surprises along the way, but something far more subtle. We're here for the apple. Yes, the apple. Specifically, why doctors once believed that simply smelling an apple could soothe your sadness. Not eating it, not mixing it with herbs or grinding it into some bitter syrup, just taking a slow, deliberate breath of its fragrance. Now, I know you probably won't survive this episode. Not because of anything dire, but because somewhere around the 8th or 9th minute, your eyelids will betray you. The words will melt together, the past will become your pillow, and the scent of old apples may follow you into your dreams, but that's exactly the point. So wherever you are, your couch, your bed, the floor beside your softly snoring dog, let's begin. Leave the present behind, take a breath, a long one, and follow the cobblestones ahead as we step quietly into a street of the 14th century. You find yourself standing in a town wrapped in silence, save for the gentle creak of wooden carts and the occasional chime of a distant chapel bell. The sun is slipping away behind slate rooftops, casting long shadows that stretch like fingers across moss-covered walls. You walk slowly, your shoes, or maybe just your bare feet, soft against the stone. The air smells faintly of firewood, wool, and something else, something floral, something sweet. It's not a perfume exactly, it's softer. Softer than lavender, but sharper than rose, and as you walk you begin to notice where it's coming from. A woman passes you with a delicate metal ball tied to her belt. She wears it like jewellery, but when the wind catches it, you realise it's a container of sorts. Tiny holes reveal dried petals, herbs, and apple peel. Not the crisp, bright apples of today's grocery store. These are crab apples, smaller, tartar. They're sent deeper, like sun-warmed wood and sugar mixed with moss. In her time, that little ball might be the only thing standing between her and a slow slide into melancholia, the old word for sadness, but not just sadness as we know it. In the medieval world, melancholia was a force, a fog that clouded not just your mood, but your blood, your thoughts, even your soul. And the cure wasn't found in pills or pep talks. It was in balance, harmony, in restoring the rhythm between the body's four humours, blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Sadness, they said, came from too much black bile. Heavy, cold, slow, the weight of it wasn't just metaphorical, it was physical. You were literally carrying darkness inside you. And so to lighten the load, you reached for what was warm, what was dry, what was sweet, what was fragrant. An apple. Not just any apple, though. A dried one, carefully sliced and placed inside what's called a pomander, from the French pomme d'ambre, or apple of amber. Some were made of wood, others silver, even gold if you were wealthy. Inside, apple, cloves, cinnamon, crushed rose petals, perhaps some ambergris if your apothecary had the right connections. And every time you lifted it to your nose, it wasn't just a smell. It was an act of survival, of rebalance, of returning to yourself. You keep walking, past stalls draped in faded linen, past the glow of oil lamps behind tiny glass windows. One shop's door hangs open and warm air greets you. The scent here is stronger, thicker. You step inside. This is an apothecary. The walls are lined with jars, some ceramic, some glass, each labelled in delicate script. You spot familiar things, dried oranges, rosemary, honey. And then, near the window, a bowl of apples. Some are fresh, their skins blushed with russet and gold. Others are sliced and drying on woven mats, their edges curling inward like petals. The apothecary nods at you wordlessly. He knows why you've come. You sit on a stool and he brings over a cloth sachet. He places it in your hand, and as your fingers close around it, warmth pulses through the linen. You lift it to your nose. The smell is impossible to explain. It's the scent of a memory you've never had, of autumns that never quite existed, of sweetness touched with age. And you begin to understand. You don't need to know the precise chemistry of volatile organic compounds or the neural pathways scent takes to reach the amygdala. You don't need to know that apples contain esters that mimic calming compounds in the brain. You only need to know that something inside you just unclenched. Historians still argue whether this ritual, the act of smelling, was medicine, magic, or both. Whether the doctors believed it would change your internal chemistry or merely your emotional weather. But you're not worried about that now. You stay there for a while, listening to the sound of crackling fire, the distant voice of someone selling bread outside, the heartbeat soft rustle of herbs drying on strings. The apothecary doesn't ask questions, he doesn't rush you. And the scent just lingers. Eventually you rise, stepping back into the twilight. The air is cooler now, the street quieter. But you feel warmer, lighter, not healed perhaps, but soothed, as if some ancient part of you, something older than your name, has been quietly heard. You continue down the street, past another figure holding a pomander, past a man humming to himself near a closed bakery, past a cat perched on a windowsill, flicking its tail like a metronome. The scent of apples lingers, and so does the question, how far can scent travel? Not through space, but through time. You'll find out soon. The scent still lingers as you walk deeper into the cobbled heart of this medieval town now cloaked in dusk. The stone beneath your feet is still warm from the sun, and the occasional echo of footsteps or distant laughter reminds you that life in this place is lived gently, in layers, like the aroma still caught in your memory, delicate and strange. You pause beneath a crooked overhang where lantern light spills in orange halos, and just ahead you see a sign swinging on rusted iron hinges, a painted symbol of 4 droplets, each a different colour, crimson, gold, green and black. You've arrived at the barber-surgeon's shop. You step through the doorway and are greeted not by a blade or bowl, but by the smell of iron and wine and, unexpectedly, lemons. In this place, healing and humour bleed into one another. The air is thick with the quiet conviction that the body is a map of elements, not organs. A place where sadness has a substance, a cause, a cure. The man before you, draped in a woolen smock smeared with ink and ash, gestures for you to sit. And so you do, upon a low stool with wobbly legs and a view of the fireplace. He speaks softly in terms you half understand about the 4 humours, not emotions, but fluids. Blood, phlegm, yellow bile, black bile, each one tied to your mood, your energy, your thoughts. Balance them, and you're well. Misalign them, and melancholy sets in like mould in a cold house. You are melancholic, he says without hesitation. Not because of your words, he's asked none, but because of the pallor of your cheeks, the droop in your shoulders, the way your hand clutches your wrist without realizing. He nods knowingly, pointing to a stained drawing pinned on the wall. 4 boxes, each marked by a symbol. Flame, water, earth, air. The melancholic type, you learn, belongs to earth, cold, dry, heavy. It's not a feeling, it's a temperature. In this time, science is inseparable from sensation. The concept of depression as chemical imbalance doesn't exist yet, but the body as weather system is common wisdom. And sadness, what we'd now call clinical depression, despair or deep emotional fatigue, is diagnosed not with machines, but with metaphors. You're invited to sip a bitter tea made from boiled beetroot and warmed wine. But before you drink, the barber reaches behind him and lifts a pouch from a shelf, leather, frayed at the edges. He opens it carefully, as though it contained something alive. Inside are rings of dried apple, pale and curled like coins of golden parchment. He places one on a clay plate and leans forward, instructing you to inhale slowly, deeply, like you're breathing in sunlight. It smells familiar, but not quite modern. The apple's sweetness is shadowed by dust, dried chamomile, and something resinous, perhaps frankincense or myrrh, a fragrance not meant to excite but to settle. You are too cold, he says softly, too dry inside. He fans his fingers toward the hearth. This will warm you, soften you. In the medieval mind, sadness and cold were siblings, and the cure wasn't just about smell, it was about sensation. Heat restored balance, so you're placed near the fire, where warmth rises in waves from the flagstone floor. A blanket is wrapped around your shoulders, another apple slice is pressed into your palm. Not to eat, but to hold, to be with. You're not a patient, you're a person out of rhythm, and scent is the first note in the melody of healing. Somewhere in this town a feast is ending. You hear the echoes of lutes and ceramic cups clinking in rhythm. But here, time has slowed. The man tells you that pomanders are favoured not only by physicians, but by travellers and lovers and widows and midwives. Apples are hung in doorways, carried in robes, buried in graves. And just as you're beginning to feel drowsy, he explains that this understanding of the four humours didn't come from Europe at all, not originally. It was carried across continents by Greek thinkers like Hippocrates and Galen, then refined in Arabic medical texts translated into Latin and adopted into Christian theology. The body became a sacred garden, and melancholia shadow cast when its balance was disturbed. Still, historians argue whether this framework was truly scientific or simply spiritual metaphor. Some claim the four humours held genuine diagnostic value, a proto-psychological model of emotional well-being. Others say it was ritual and reassurance masquerading as medicine. But in the flicker of this firelight, you're not interested in verdicts, only in comfort. You're asked no questions, there's no pressure to speak. You simply sit, breathe, and warm. Above you, on a shelf of dusty bottles, one label catches your eye. Malus, Latin for apple, once called Malus domestica in medicinal texts, believed to cleanse the digestive tract, awaken the senses, and soothe disturbed passions, a fruit born of myth and medicine, tied to Eve and knowledge, but here offered not as punishment, but as peace. And peace is exactly what you feel. There's no jolt of euphoria, no miracle cure, but something in your chest has quieted. A pulse slowed, a thought softened. Your body, it seems, believes what the barber believes. You glance once more at the chart of humours on the wall. Earth, cold, dry, black bile, but beside it, something else. Fire, warm, dry, yellow, bile. It strikes you somewhere between alchemy and intuition that maybe sadness needs not just comfort, but contradiction. That maybe the cure was never the apple, but the act of choosing sweetness in a bitter hour. The barber refills your pouch. You thank him with a look. Words, in this time, are currency. Outside, the street glows with early moonlight. A few stars blink awake. You walk again, slower now, as though your legs are no longer carrying your sorrow, but just your body. The apple scent stays with you, not cloying, not demanding, just there, like a quiet friend walking beside you, asking nothing, offering everything. The moon has risen now, high above the slanted rooftops and chimney stacks, casting soft silver over the narrow medieval streets. You drift like smoke through alleys and arches, no longer merely a visitor, but someone half belonging to this shadowy world. Your breath fogs faintly in the cool night air, and with every exhale the warmth of apple and firewood seems to linger a little longer in your chest. You stop beside a fountain carved in the shape of a lion, its water trickling steadily, almost musically, into a moss-lined basin. The scent of dried apples is quieter now, but not gone. It clings faintly to your sleeves, to the corners of your thoughts. Ahead, a lamplight flickers in a small building nestled between a bakery and a scribe shop. Its sign bears a painted razor and a bowl, symbols of a barber surgeon, though in this world they are not mere hairdressers. They are physicians, dentists, minor surgeons, bone setters, and sometimes philosophers. You've already met one such man earlier, but here a different voice awaits, a younger one, and curious. Inside, the barber surgeon greets you with a grin stained by the red wine. His sleeves are rolled to the elbow, his hands smelling faintly of vinegar and cloves. He doesn't seem rushed. Tonight, there are no bones to set, no blood to clean. Just a fire burning low in the hearth and a table laid out with scrolls, quills, and jars filled with murky oils. He invites you to sit, offering a warm cloth for your hands, soaked in rosemary and cider. You take it, pressing the warmth into your palms, and he begins to speak, not in cold instruction, but in meandering thoughts, like a storyteller with no urgency. He begins with a question. Do you know why the humours live inside you? You tilt your head. They are not just fluids, he says. They are the personalities of your body, each one with its own rhythm, its own season. You nod, though the thought is strange, but he explains further. Blood is spring, warm and moist, tied to air and optimism. Yellow bile is summer, hot and dry, quick-tempered, bold. Black bile is autumn, cold and dry, thoughtful, melancholic. And phlegm is winter, cold and moist, sluggish but calm. To live well, he tells you, is to keep the seasons inside you in balance. But what happens when autumn stretches too long? when black bile pools like stagnant water in the soul. That's when melancholia takes root, not as a passing sadness, but a profound stillness, a heaviness that sleep does not fix. In the Middle Ages, melancholia wasn't a poetic mood, it was a clinical diagnosis, a disorder of temperament, a fault of fluids, a gloom so real it could be measured in the curve of a man's spine, the slowness of his blink, the bitterness of his words. And so, to heal melancholia, one had to act not on the mind, but on the body, to warm it, to dry it, to stir its sluggish rhythm back into motion. You glance toward the hearth where dried apple peels are being gently smoked on a metal tray. Their scent is earthy and sweet, a whisper of something once alive and sun-fed. Apples, the barber says, are of a dry nature, but also of subtle sweetness. They chase away black bile through the nose without shocking the mind. You raise an eyebrow. He smiles. Shock cures rarely work. You cannot frighten sadness out of the body. You must charm it. He reaches for a parchment and spreads it across the table. A diagram of the human form, drawn not with muscle and sinew, but with symbols. Moons and suns, rivers and winds, vines curling around the spine. Medicine in this time is not so much anatomy as poetry. Pointing to the head, he traces a small spiral near the nose. The nose is the gate to the soul, he says. Scent goes straight to the brain, faster than light or thought. It bypasses reason. That belief wasn't entirely wrong. Modern neuroscience confirms it. Our olfactory nerve is directly connected to the limbic system, where memory and emotion live. A scent can evoke childhood before the conscious mind has caught up. It can transport us, calm us, before we understand why. But in this medieval world, scent isn't just neurological, it's spiritual, sacred. You lean in as he shows you the dried petals of damask roses, the bark of cinnamon, the zest of bitter oranges. But apples, always apples, are placed at the centre. A symbol of health, of sweetness, of inner clarity. A fruit that, in Galenic medicine, purifies the air and cools the stomach, a fruit that heals gently. Some say, he adds in a quieter voice, that the smell of apples banishes not just melancholy, but wicked spirits. He smiles again, not mockingly, but wistfully. Of course, historians still argue whether melancholia was spiritual disease or simply sadness, whether demons were metaphor or real. He shrugs. But what matters is that the cure was given gently, and that gentleness is what strikes you. In this time there is brutality, yes, leeches and lancets, bleeding and purging, but there is also this, the quiet faith that the body responds to comfort, that the soul listens when spoken to in sweetness. You begin to see how apples, of all things, became medicine, not as punishment, but as permission, to slow down, to breathe, to feel. He offers you a final gift, a small linen sachet stitched shut with red thread. Inside slices of dried apple, cloves and marjoram. He tells you to keep it near your pillow. When the black mood comes, he says, let the apple remind you that even rot can be sweet. You thank him and step back into the street, pouch in hand. The moon hangs lower now, larger, pale as milk. The town is quieter. A dog barks once, far away. Somewhere a woman hums a lullaby. You walk on, warmed not by fire, but by something slower burning. A recognition, a comfort, a strange sense that sadness does not always need to be solved. Sometimes it only needs to be seen. And here, in the time of humours and herbal sachets, it is seen, and gently, patiently offered an apple. The night deepens, though the town still hums with quiet life. Candles flicker behind shuttered windows, casting gold patterns that tremble on the cobblestone paths as you pass. A faint wind rustles through the thatched roofs and ivy-draped walls, and above it all hangs the scent, delicate, persistent, calming, of apples dried and warmed, tucked into cloth, crushed into oil, or simply waiting in bowls near doors to greet the melancholy-hearted. You round a corner where the street widens into a small square, moonlight pooled like silver ink in its centre. A merchant's cart sits half-covered with canvas, and behind it, the wooden stall of a perfumer glows softly with lampfire and glass jars filled with colour. The perfumer is still awake. You step closer. He doesn't look up immediately. He's bent over his workbench, carefully grinding a mixture of petals and peels with a stone mortar. A single candle illuminates the task, the light licking up over his hands and sleeves. He gestures for you to enter without breaking his rhythm. Here the air is thick with layered scents, lavender, thyme, orange blossom, and again that familiar note of apple. Not the crisp, sugary apple of markets and pies, but something more ancient, something with earth still clinging to its skin. He speaks softly, his voice as smooth as the oils he bottles. You're here for the sadness cure, aren't you? You hesitate, then nod. He smiles, not unkindly, and continues grinding. You're not alone, he says. Half the town carries weight in their chest that no blade can cut and no priest can bless away. But a scent, he lifts a vial of golden liquid to the light. A scent can speak to the part of you that listens in silence. He tells you about posies, small bunches of herbs and flowers wrapped in cloth carried in sleeves or tucked behind ears. They weren't just protection against bad smells or plague, though that was certainly part of it. They were shields against sorrow. If you could keep sweetness near your breath, perhaps you could keep despair from taking root. And apples were the heart of that sweetness, often sliced and dried with cloves, sometimes soaked in rosewater, even crushed and mixed with nutmeg to perfume the hands. A simple fruit, yes, but in this world no scent was chosen lightly. Apples carried weight, symbolism. They were thought to cool the blood, settle the stomach, brighten the mood. To balance the humours, as the physicians believed, boeing, but also to remind the soul of gardens, of light, of something gentle. He opens a drawer and pulls out a small wooden apple carved with a hinge. Inside, soft beeswax cradles a blend of dried petals and fruit. He passes it to you. A poor man's pomander, he says, but no less powerful. You hold it in your hand and lift it to your nose. The scent is layered, dry, sweet, warm, and faintly bitter. It feels like memory, like the moment before sleep. He watches you for a moment, then speaks again. The nose is wiser than the mind, he says. It doesn't argue or explain. It simply reacts. And in that reaction, healing begins. You sit beside the workbench as he mixes a new blend, this time with a mortar of polished brass. He adds slivers of green apple, dried marigold petals, a shaving of sandalwood. As he works, he tells you stories. A noble woman who filled her bedchambers with apple-scented sachets, convinced they warded off nightmares. A monk who brewed apple skin and honey to calm his shaking hands before prayer. A baker who lined his ovens with peels so his loaves would carry the scent of comfort into every home. Not all believed in their power, of course. Some scoffed. Scholars argued, then as now, whether scent could truly alter one's health, whether melancholia was a fault of the body or the soul, whether the cure lay in medicine, in prayer, in the passing of time, or in apples. You breathe in again. The scent does something. You can't name it, but it's there. Let it rest in your chest, the perfumer murmurs, not just your nose. There's something deeply human about this belief, that healing doesn't always need to be sharp or sudden, that it can come in waves, in scent, in softness, that maybe, just maybe, not all cures must be cures. Some can simply be kindness. He hands you a small cloth bundle tied with twine. For sleep, he says. You step outside again, the town square hushed beneath the soft press of midnight. You walk now with this quiet weight in your palm, a warmth against your fingers. There's no fanfare, no miracle, but you feel softer, as though the sadness inside you has shifted, not vanished, but loosened. As you walk, you pass others who hold similar bundles. A woman with a pouch tied to her wrist. A child cradling a tiny wooden sphere that smells faintly of pear and mint. A young man walking slowly, eyes closed, breathing deeply into a scarf that smells, unmistakably, of apple. You are not alone. This is a town that does not fear sadness. It lives with it. It acknowledges its presence but refuses to let it reign. And the tools it uses are not harsh, not punishing, but fragrant, familiar, tender. You find a bench beside a closed bookshop and sit, your back against warm wood. The stars above have gathered in quiet clusters. Your eyes close without you meaning to. Even now, centuries later, science has begun to return to what these perfumers and herbalists once knew without proving. That scent, especially familiar, pleasant scent, can reduce heart rate, lower cortisol, ease anxiety, that apple-scented candles in hospital rooms lower blood pressure, that the body remembers kindness delivered through the nose. But tonight you don't need data, only this moment, this breath, this apple. The night feels longer now, stretched out like a soft blanket over the rooftops of the sleeping town. The stars seem brighter, yet farther away, like distant candles flickering behind the curtain of a dream. You walk slowly through a narrow passage where ivy coils up the sides of mossy brick, and a wooden sign overhead creaks faintly in the breeze. It's shaped like a chalice, painted with curling green vines and tiny golden apples. You step through the open archway into a hidden place, half garden, half cloister, lit by the silver wash of moonlight and the amber flicker of oil lamps. This is the apothecary's garden. It's quieter here than anywhere you've been tonight. Even the wind has hushed its voice. You move slowly between the raised stone beds of herbs and fruit trees. Apple trees, small and twisted, but bearing fruit that glows faintly in the dark, line the outer edges like quiet sentinels. Between them grow marjoram, sage, fennel, and thyme, each in their tidy rows. You run your fingers gently along the edge of a lavender stalk, then press a small leaf of lemon balm between your fingers, releasing a delicate citrusy scent. From the far end of the garden you hear footsteps approaching, soft, deliberate and familiar. No words are needed as he gestures toward a bed of low trees, their branches heavy with tiny crab apples. You kneel beside him and begin to pick them one by one, their cool skins smooth under your fingers. These are not apples you'd bite into. They're small, sharp and mouth-puckering, but their scent, when sliced and dried, becomes deeper, rounder, more comforting. The apothecary sets a basket between you and begins slicing them into thin rounds, placing each on a drying mat woven from rushes. As he works, he hums. A simple tune, nothing you recognize. But it feels old, older than the buildings around you, older than the garden itself. A melody meant to guide the hands, not the ears. The rhythm is steady, calming. He breaks the silence softly. The apple, he says, is one of the few plants that calms without dulling. Sweet but not intoxicating. Fragrant but not overwhelming. A companion fruit. You watch as he places the slices in neat rows, careful not to overlap them. Above your heads, a bat swoops silently, chasing invisible prey. The air is rich with scent. Chamomile from the far bed, the sweetness of cut apple, the dusty tang of sage. The monks believe the garden heals simply by being, he continues, but I think it's the tending that soothes. The act of caring, of choosing. You nod, the words slipping into your thoughts like warm tea. He hands you a sprig of dried elderflower. We add this to the mix for those whose grief has become too quiet, too heavy. Elder lifts it just a little. You crush the blossom between your fingers. The scent is airy, light, and just the slightest bit spicy. He speaks again, this time more slowly, as if translating not just language but belief. To be sad in this world is not wrong. It is not shameful, but sadness, when left too long untouched, becomes rot. It turns inward, stale, and so we stir it gently, through scent, through warmth, through time. That idea feels different than anything you've been told before. In your world, sadness is often treated like something to be conquered, silenced, fixed. But here, it's something to be understood, held, moved. You stand and follow him to a long table where bundles of herbs hang drying from beams overhead. On the table lie earthen bowls filled with dried ingredients. Apple, rose hips, peppermint, tiny violet petals. He begins to mix them in a cloth pouch, layering them by scent. Dry base, sweet middle, bright top. This blend, he says, is for the sadness that wakes you before dawn. He ties the pouch and places it in your hands. Then he makes another. This one is for the sadness that never speaks, but presses on the chest. And another. For the sadness that comes in waves with no clear shore. Each one smells different. Each one feels different. You realize in that moment that scent in this place is not just medicine. It's language. A quiet language of care, of acknowledgement, of empathy. It says, I see you. I hear your silence. You're not alone. As the final apple slices are laid to dry, he lights a stick of dried bay and walks the perimeter of the garden, letting the smoke curl upward, like a prayer sent without words. You watch him move through the stillness, the ritual as natural as watering or harvesting. Historically, apothecaries like him were the bridges between physical health and emotional care. They mixed medicines, yes, but they also listened, offered presence. Their gardens were living pharmacies, yes, but also sanctuaries, places where grief could stretch its limbs and breathe again. Modern historians still debate how effective these practices were, whether the dried apples and herbs actually altered brain chemistry or simply comforted through ritual. But standing here, you find the debate irrelevant. The ritual is the medicine. As dawn's first light begins to dilute the darkness above, the apothecary walks you to the gate of the garden. He presses one final bundle into your palm, a fresh one, with apple, elder, and something else you can't name. He doesn't speak, he only nods. You step back into the world beyond the garden, your hands carrying more than scent. You carry care, intention, a feeling that something has shifted. Not everything, but something. Enough. And that is often all that's needed. The sky is beginning to pale with the first breath of morning, just a whisper of light rising behind the sloping roofs. But the town is still asleep. The hush hasn't lifted. You walk slowly now, as if you've grown accustomed to the rhythm of this place, to its silence and softness. Your feet follow the familiar cobbled paths, but this time you take a turn toward the upper edge of the town, where buildings grow taller, grander, and older still. The air shifts. There is something new on the breeze, something floral and faintly musky, interwoven with warm bread and burning tallow. You pass under the arch of a stone gate, its iron hinges wrapped in ivy, and step into the quiet grandeur of a courtyard. Ahead of you is a large timbered building, ornate with golden glass windows and a carved crest above the doorway. A royal seal. You've reached the house of nobility. A servant greets you without question, as if they too have been expecting you, and ushers you into the manor. The floor is marble cold beneath your feet. Everything is quiet except the gentle swish of a tapestry shifting in the wind and the far-off chiming of a silver clock. They lead you up a staircase and into a chamber with curtains drawn tight. Candles burn low, and soft light glows from lanterns enclosed in tinted glass. The air smells heavily of rose oil and myrrh, but beneath it all, once again, is that trace of apple, faint and aged, tucked into the corners of the room like memory. You stand quietly as a woman seated near the window lifts her head to look at you. She is dressed in velvet, her hands resting on a coverlet embroidered with tiny stitched vines. Her eyes are rimmed with the red of sleeplessness. Her shoulders are slightly hunched, not from age, but from weight, the invisible kind. This is the Queen, or perhaps a Duchess. Her title is less important than the truth you recognize in her expression. Melancholy lives here too. On the side table beside her rests a silver bowl of apples, some fresh, some cut and drying on a linen cloth. There is also a crystal vial of apple blossom oil, a velvet sachet stitched with tiny gold thread, and a small book of herbal prayers. All these things surround her, not as decoration, but as comfort. The servant steps aside as an older woman enters, a royal healer, perhaps, or a private apothecary. She greets the lady softly and lifts the silver bowl, selecting an apple, with the care of someone choosing a sacred object. She slices it thinly, then lays the pieces atop a warm stone near the hearth. As they heat, the room slowly fills with that scent again. Apple, dry and sweet, wrapped in whispers of clove and lavender. You sit nearby, close enough to feel the warmth, far enough to respect the quiet. No one speaks for some time. Eventually, the lady by the window begins to hum, barely audible, a tune with no lyrics, no obvious melody. But the scent seems to shape itself to her voice, curling through the room in slow waves. It's here you begin to understand the same remedies given to peasants and pilgrims were given to nobles and queens. The sadness may have worn different clothes, but it pressed on the chest just the same. No rank could prevent it, and so apples found their way to every pillow. The healer opens a journal filled with neat ink lines and begins to read aloud. Not prescriptions, but reflections, observations, a record of the lady's sleep, her appetite, her dreams. Today, she notes, there is more stillness. A longer gaze out the window, a steadier breath. One of the apple slices curls slightly as it warms, releasing a second wave of scent. The healer murmurs, "This one is ripe with late autumn. That's good for those who mourn. She lifts the linen sachet, brushes it once across the woman's wrist, then rests it beside her head on the pillow. The Queen closes her eyes, and it is enough. No potions, no grand proclamations, just presence, scent, care. You glance at the room again. There are no garlands of wealth here, no gold glittering for its own sake. Everything that glows does so with purpose, soft, warm grounding. Even the books are not for reading. They are full of pressed flowers, dried orange peel, tiny bundles of thyme tied in ribbon. The bookshelf is a garden in disguise, and still, that gentle scent of apples. The healer turns to you and begins to speak in a whisper, as though reading your thoughts. The noble houses often look to France and Italy for their cures, she says, but it was the monks of Ireland who first wrote of the sadness that cannot be named and the scent of orchard air as its balm. She walks over to a window and pulls back a curtain just slightly. A small garden lies below, stone-walled and perfect, and in its centre stands a single apple tree, twisted and bare-limbed in the pre-dawn light. Every court has its tree, she says. They are chosen young and tended for generations. No one eats from it. It is for scent only. She tells you the apples from that tree are picked just as they begin to fall, dried in the low heat of a kitchen hearth, then sealed in waxed cloth and stored in cedar drawers. Only when sorrow visits the house are they taken out, sliced, warmed and offered. They say grief is less frightening when it smells familiar, she adds. The apple reminds us we are still among the living. There's something almost sacred in this tradition, as though sadness is not seen as an illness to eradicate, but a season to endure. And scent, especially that of apples, is the thread that pulls one gently through it, one breath at a time. You glance back at the woman resting on the chair. Her hands have loosened, her brow is smooth. She sleeps. The healer bows her head toward you and leaves without sound. You follow shortly after, descending the wide staircase, the apple scent still ghosting the air behind you. Outside, the sky is shifting into the softest grey. The town is still, its windows just beginning to glow from within, but you feel no urgency to leave. You walk slowly, the streets quiet beneath your steps. You carry with you now not just sachets and slices, but the knowing, the understanding that no one, no matter how grand or humble, is immune to the weight that presses without form. And yet something as simple as a warm apple slice held near the heart can begin the slow unburdening. In this world, sadness is not shunned, it is met gently with scent. And somewhere in your own world, in your own time, maybe that truth still holds. The morning is unfurling like parchment beneath a golden sun. It spills slowly across the rooftops, catching the dew on window panes and warming the stone beneath your feet as you descend into the older quarter of the town. Here the streets are narrower, the houses huddled close together as though sharing secrets from centuries past. Doors lean crookedly in their frames. Vines grow unchecked along wooden shutters. Yet there is life here, quiet, gentle, steady. You pass a baker carrying a basket of steaming loaves. The warm smell of rye and smoke curls through the air. You pass a man seated on a stool carving the handle of a wooden spoon with meticulous care. He hums as he works. Even in this humble part of the town, even here, where the walls are chipped and the gutters cracked, the apple scent lingers, woven into linen sachets hung in windows, stirred into porridge pots tucked into pockets. You're drawn toward a building that looks more like a home than a business. Its door is open wide, revealing shelves stacked with cloth bundles, hanging wreaths, and dried herbs tied in loops above the hearth. A small hand-painted sign rests above the doorframe, the House of Restful Things. Inside, a woman greets you with a nod. She's middle-aged, with sleeves rolled to her elbows and a warm, flower-dusted apron. Her hands are stained with beetroot and elderberry, and she smells of thyme and something soft and buttery, possibly baked apples. She gestures to a bench near the fire, where others are already seated. No one speaks. They sit in quiet companionship, each holding something small, a cloth pouch, a warmed stone, a sprig of rosemary. You take your place among them. The bench creaks slightly beneath your weight, but no one notices. A fire crackles softly nearby, and a pot of water simmers above it, sending out tendrils of steam, scented with cinnamon, pear, and, yes, apple once more. The woman moves with quiet intention, tending to her visitors like a gardener among seedlings. She offers you a small bowl filled with thin slices of stewed apple, softened with honey and rosemary. You take a bite. The texture is tender, the flavour both sweet and woodsy. It rests on your tongue like a lullaby. Then she begins to speak, not loudly, not directly, but like a stream murmuring beside a path. Her voice is the kind that feels like memory. Most people think sadness has to shout to be noticed, she says, but often it only sighs, and if you don't listen for it, you miss it completely, until it's already wrapped around your bones. She folds linen as she talks, each crease precise. We make things here, she explains. Small things, useful things, things that remind the body it is cared for. She places one bundle in the hands of an old man who hasn't yet looked up. Another is passed to a girl no older than 10, who cradles it like a kitten. Then to you she hands a folded cloth, soft and warm. Inside it is a single baked apple, dusted with cinnamon, filled with crushed almonds and dried currants. But it's more than food. It's a ritual. She tells you how women used to bake these on winter mornings and leave them on windowsills for grieving neighbours. How children would find them wrapped in napkins tucked into their school satchels. How midwives would offer them to new mothers, not just for strength, but for comfort. A signal you're not alone. As you eat slowly, you listen to the room breathe. There's no pressure here to talk, to confess, to heal, only to be, to rest, to taste, to feel the warmth of something made with care. She continues. In some towns, they buried apples in the corners of graveyards so that the dead wouldn't feel forgotten. In others, they pressed the juice into holy water, called it the drink of remembrance. You let those words settle. Somewhere in the space between folklore and medicine, between memory and myth, there is truth. Apples were never just fruit. They were carriers of story, of comfort, of slow, soft healing. Outside, church bells begin to ring, a quiet chorus that folds itself into the sounds of carts rolling and roosters crowing. The day is beginning in earnest now, but no one here rises. Time has slowed inside these walls. The woman sits beside you and begins to braid lavender stems with a strip of leather. She hands it to you, once finished. For your hands, she says. Idle hands get restless minds. Keep them busy, but gently. You feel the weight of it. Light, yet grounding. It smells faintly of apple still, though none was used. It's as if the scent has followed you, woven itself into everything, invisible and insistent. She points to a faded tapestry on the wall, a woven image of a tree, its roots curling around sleeping animals, its branches holding stars. That's the rest tree, she says. We say it grows in the place between waking and dreaming. In her voice is no doubt, no question, just knowing. And then, softer, some sadness doesn't need fixing, it just needs a safe place to sit. That sentiment carries in the silence that follows. You look around at the others and no one meets your gaze, yet you feel surrounded by a quiet understanding. In this place, sadness isn't a problem to be solved, it's a guest to be honoured, a traveller to be offered tea and apples, not turned away. You realise something else. Healing in this world isn't linear. It doesn't follow a schedule. It loops, it spirals, it pauses, it lets you rest. You stand eventually, not because you're finished, but because your heart feels full. The woman hands you a final bundle before you go, a small linen sachet filled with dried apple, thyme, and crushed mint. For clear breath and clear thoughts, she says with a wink. You step outside. The town is fully awake now. The air is rich with sound, hoofbeats, laughter, clattering pots. But beneath it all, that scent follows. Quiet, faithful, apple sweet. You walk slowly down the main path, past shopkeepers and priests, farmers and children. The faces are varied, weathered, bright, tired kind, but in many of their hands you spot familiar shapes. Cloth bundles, sachets, apples wrapped in leaves. You begin to see what this town truly is. Not just a place of markets and stone, but a place of shared ritual. A place that meets sadness not with avoidance but with presence. A place where healing is as much an act of community as it is of medicine. And as the wind shifts again, carrying with it the ever-present note of apple, you find yourself smiling. Not because the weight has lifted entirely, but because you know you don't have to carry it alone. As the sun climbs above the tiled rooftops and gilds the chimneys in gold, the town slowly sheds its sleepy hush. The warmth of the morning gathers in the spaces between buildings, soaking into stone and wood, turning dew to steam on the eaves. But you, despite the awakening world around you, continue to move slowly. You are not rushed. Your breath follows the rhythm of the town, the inhale of baking bread, the exhale of apple-scented air. You turn onto a quieter path, one that curls gently uphill and disappears behind a wall of climbing roses. It leads to the edge of the town, to a place neither wholly urban nor fully rural. As you pass beneath a trellis woven with vines, the sounds of morning bustle fade behind you. In its place, birdsong, the soft chitter of finches in the trees, the distant creak of a water wheel. A narrow wooden sign points the way. Sanctuary of St. Leoba, convent and herbery. The gate is ajar, you step through. Inside, the world feels different. Not separate exactly, but quieter, deeper. The convent is modest. Pale stone, worn smooth by time, ivy curling along its base. A low wall surrounds a circular garden, carefully tended but not overly arranged. It has the look of something ancient, something loved. A nun meets you at the garden's edge. She wears a dark wool habit and a plain wooden cross. Her eyes are bright, her face lined with sun and laughter. She greets you without surprise, as if you've come home after a long journey. Without words, she gestures you to follow. You pass through the cloister's open arches, beneath stone carvings of leaves and lions, and into the herbery, a long room filled with drying bundles, pottery jars, and parchment scrolls. The air inside is rich, dense with rosemary, sage, lavender, and yes, that familiar thread of apple. Dried, preserved, distilled. The scent is everywhere, woven into cloth, pressed into wax, floating on the heat that rises from a kettle over the central hearth. The nun begins to speak, her voice low and melodic. In our order, she says, we do not treat the soul as something separate from the body. They are as the apple and the seed, bound, one within the other. She leads you to a long table where bowls of crushed petals, sliced roots, and shriveled fruit are arranged in concentric circles. Sadness, she says, is a shadow the soul casts when the body is tired. So we ease the body, and we listen for the light. She begins mixing gently, dried apple slices, calendula, a spoonful of honey crystals, crushed mint. The motion is circular, unhurried. You sit beside her. The rhythm of her hands is like prayer. She speaks again, telling you how St. Leoba, their patron, once cured a grieving widow, not with words or doctrine, but with warm cider and sweet herbs. She didn't speak until the woman had fallen asleep, the nun says. Only then did she sing. You ask quietly, do you still sing for the sorrowing? She seals. Always, but softly, at their pace. She brings a warm cloth to your hands, presses it into your palms. The scent releases at once, apple and thyme, rosewater and cinnamon. You close your fingers around it, breathing in deeply. Then she tells you something you didn't expect. There is a ritual we keep, passed from nun to nun, for those who carry grief that will not lift. It's called the Night of the Apple Flame. You look up. She begins explaining slowly, carefully, as though reciting something from memory. On the longest night of winter, each sister prepares a candle infused with oil of apple blossom and balm. They are left unlit until midnight. Each candle bears a ribbon, and each ribbon the name of someone, living or dead, who has carried great sorrow. At midnight the candles are lit one by one, their scents rising in silent procession. No prayers are said aloud, no sermons given. Only the breath of the apples, warm and fragrant, filling the chapel. The idea, she says, is not to chase away the sadness, but to give it a place to sit, a chair in the corner, a cup of cider, a light to see by. You imagine the flicker of all those flames, the rise of apple and balm into the vaulted ceiling, the quiet recognition of loss without fear, without fixing. Historians still argue whether rituals like these were effective, she adds softly, whether scent and silence truly changed the course of sorrow. She glances at you. But you and I know they did. You believe her. She continues to show you the workings of the herbery, the journals where they track every visitor's scent preferences, The jars labelled not by ingredient but by emotion. For the heart that lingers, for the thoughts that loop, for the sleep that won't come. And every one, you notice, contains some trace of apple. Dried peel, blossom oil, fermented pulp. It has become not just a cure, but a symbol, a language. At one point she stops before a small chest, unlocks it with an iron key, and opens the lid. Inside are sachets wrapped in velvet, sealed with wax. She lifts one reverently and hands it to you. "These are for griefs that return like tides," she whispers. "Keep it for when your own does." You accept it with both hands. Outside, the day continues without urgency. The bells of the town begin to toll the late morning hour, but here in the convent, time flows slower. The sadness of the world isn't held back, but it's softened, guided, given rhythm. You prepare to leave, but the nun stops you. She places a bundle in your arms, wrapped in soft cloth, warm from the hearth. "For the road," she says. You thank her and step out into the garden once more. The apple tree at the centre glows under the midday light. Its branches are bare now, its fruit already picked, but the memory of its bloom lingers. As you pass beneath the trellis and return to the edge of the waking world, you carry not just scent, but stillness, a kind of knowing that in the hush of convents and gardens, in the flicker of fire and the sweetness of apples, sorrow has a place to rest. And so perhaps do you. You descend from the convent garden with the sun now warming your shoulders. The scent of dried apple still clings gently to your sleeves, mingled now with the faint perfume of lavender and candle wax. Each step feels a little lighter, as if you've left a sliver of your sadness back in the cloistered herbery. Not discarded, but shared. The path twists gently downward, winding back toward the heart of the town. But instead of retracing your steps, your feet carry you further eastward, to the border where cobbled stone gives way to packed earth. Here lies the orchard. It isn't a formal space, not symmetrical or finely groomed like the Queen's garden or the convent's tended beds. No, this orchard is wild in parts, its trees uneven in shape and age. Some are twisted and gnarled, their branches like knotted fingers. Others are fresh shoots just beginning to climb skyward. The air is still cool beneath the canopy, though rays of sun scatter gold light across the grass like coins dropped in haste. You aren't alone here. Scattered through the orchard are townspeople. Old women in headscarves collecting windfallen fruit, barefoot children chasing each other around trunks, and men with dirt-stained hands tending the roots. They glance at you, then return to their tasks. You're welcome, but not needed. This is not a space for ceremony or hierarchy. You sit at the base of a large apple tree, its bark dimpled and cool against your back. A branch hangs low, its fruit blushing red and gold in the sunlight. The air here smells alive, not just apples, but earth, moss, damp bark, and something green and sharp and wild. You breathe it in and let it settle into you. A boy approaches. He's no older than 8. He holds an apple in his palm, but not as if to eat it. He presses it to his nose, breathes deeply, then sets it on a stone at the foot of the tree. "For the sad man," he explains, seeing your how puzzled look. "He sits here sometimes." You ask who the sad man is, but the boy only shrugs. He cries, but not loud. Mama says that's why the tree grows strong. Then he skips away. You look again at the apple on the stone, now glinting in a shaft of light. A quiet offering. No prayers, no explanations, just a gesture. And it suddenly feels important. You stand and begin walking deeper into the orchard, where the trees grow closer together and the ground softens with layers of fallen leaves. Here, tucked beneath a canopy of old wooden shade, is a smaller space, a hidden one. Ringed by the oldest trees, its centre is marked by a low wooden bench and a circle of stones. Someone has arranged them carefully, and in the centre of the ring sits a shallow bowl filled with dried apple slices, rose petals, and lavender buds. Around the bowl are dozens of small cloth tokens, each pressed into the earth. A woman kneels beside the ring, her hands moving gently as she replaces the herbs in the bowl. Her hair is braided back, and her dress bears the stains of soil and sap. She greets you without surprise. "This is the orchard circle," she says, "where the grieving come." You kneel beside her. She continues her work, methodically removing petals, replacing apple slices with fresh ones. "It isn't consecrated," she adds, "not by any church, but it's still holy. You ask her what people do here. They sit, she says simply. They remember, or forget, or both. She offers you a small linen pouch already filled. Inside you see apple, chamomile, and something else, sandalwood, perhaps. She ties it with a thin ribbon. Write a name, she says, offering you a scrap of parchment and a stub of charcoal. You hesitate, then do. A name, a memory, a weight. You place the pouch gently into the circle beside others and feel a strange calm pass through you. Not like joy, more like exhale. The woman tells you stories, her voice barely louder than the breeze. One man came here every day for a year after his wife died. He never spoke, just sat with his apple and his silence. Another left a pouch for a child he'd never met, one lost before breath could begin. Some come with names, others with burdens that have no words. Historians won't find this in their books, she says. There's no record, but this has healed more people than most remedies I know. She places a single apple slice into the centre of the bowl and breathes deeply. Apple for the heart, lavender for the lungs, sandalwood for the soul. It's not a spell, not superstition. It's rhythm, it's care, it's memory that smells of earth and sweetness and something deeper than either. Modern medicine might call it aromatherapy. They might measure brain waves, track cortisol levels, point to the limbic system and how it links smell with emotion. But here, there's no need to measure. The orchard already knows. The woman offers you tea from a small flask, apple, ginger and clove. It's warm and slightly sweet with a bite that wakes your chest. You sit together in silence. A robin hops along the stone circle, pausing to peck at a petal. Somewhere a branch creaks as it sways in the wind. The world continues, and for the first time in a long while you feel completely present within it, not hovering outside your body, not weighed down by what ifs or what was, just here. You help her finish the offerings, placing each with care. She thanks you with a nod and begins to pack her basket. As you rise, she touches your hand gently. Grief doesn't want to be cured, she says. It wants to be carried. And with that she leaves. You walk back through the orchard, your steps slow and quiet. The town is still visible beyond the trees, but it feels far away, like a place you'll return to in your own time. You pause once more beneath the tree where the boy left his apple. It's still there, still glinting. You leave your own beside it. No name, no explanation, just an apple, and maybe that is enough. You leave the orchard behind, though a part of you lingers there, rooted beneath the shade of those trees, tucked between the apples, left in silence. The wind trails you as you walk, brushing gently at your shoulders as if to remind you, not all endings are departures. Some simply ripple into the next beginning. Now you make your way along a trail that curves away from the town entirely. Beyond the apple trees and the markets and the convent gardens lies a stretch of open land sparsely dotted with stone ruins. In the distance, hills roll like sleeping beasts, and the path ahead narrows into a ribbon of soft, worn earth. You follow it without question. The sun is higher now, warming your skin and setting the world aglow in amber hues. Birds wheel and cry overhead, and every now and then you pass a stone marker, carved with symbols that time has nearly erased. You run your fingers along one as you pass. The grooves are shallow, but your hand finds their shape. A cross, a crescent, a pair of leaves. Eventually you reach a low, crumbling wall and step through an archway. The land flattens here into a wide open field surrounded by hedges and trees, and in the middle stands what remains of a very old structure, circular, roofless, its stone walls half swallowed by ivy and wild rose. You've found what the townspeople call the Sanctuary of the Forgotten. At first you're not sure what it is. Not a church, not a home. The layout is strange. Pillars arranged in a loose circle, and in the centre, a sunken pit lined with stones and filled with dry, fragrant leaves. It smells of sage and smoke and apple. An old man sits on the low wall near the entrance, carving a piece of driftwood into a shape you can't yet recognise. He looks up as you approach and smiles, as though he's known you all your life. "Looking for peace?" he asks, voice rough with age and warmth. You nod. He gestures toward the circle. "You'll find it in layers here. Sit anywhere. Let the stones remember you." You step inside and lower yourself onto one of the stones. It's warm from the sun, smooth beneath your fingertips. The scent from the pit reaches you in waves. Apple peel, crushed marigold, old ash. Nearby, others sit in silence. A woman with closed eyes and a small braid tucked behind her ear. A man holding a leather pouch to his chest. A girl with her hands pressed into the dirt. The air is still but not heavy. It feels held. The old man begins to speak again, not loud enough to interrupt the silence, but just enough to be heard by anyone listening. This place used to be a chapel long before the cathedral in town was built. But it wasn't built for worship, not in the usual way. It was built for remembering, for sorrow that didn't fit neatly into prayers. He gestures toward the centre pit. That's where they burned the offerings, not for gods, for grief, every apple slice, every flower, every lock of hair, given up to the fire so the soul wouldn't carry it alone. You ask softly, do people still bring offerings? Always, he says, patting his pouch. Some griefs never leave, but they soften when you feed them something real. He pauses and chuckles. Historian came once, tried to write about us, said it was folk ritual, said it was just symbolism. He looks around the circle, but it's not just anything. This is practice, like breathing, like sleeping. A woman across the circle opens a cloth and reveals 3 small objects: a ring, a dried flower, and a slice of apple tied with twine. She sets them gently into the pit and bows her head. The moment stretches, not dramatic, not grand, just real. The man beside you continues. Sadness that stays too quiet for too long, it builds pressure. Like a sealed pot, what we do here and in the orchard and the convent and every hearth that boils a pot of apples with spice, it's release, it's presence, it's a different kind of medicine. He hands you a small bundle from his pouch. You can add something if you like. You unwrap it. A single apple seed nestled in a piece of red cloth. You don't know whose it was meant for, but maybe that doesn't matter. You rise, walk to the pit and kneel beside it. The scent rises, dry, sweet, tinged with something smoky and deep. You press the seed into the ashes, cover it with a pinch of dried blossom that someone else left behind, and breathe. It's not a prayer, it's not even a wish. It's a gesture, and that here is more than enough. You return to your seat. The wind begins to stir, and with it comes the faint chiming of something metallic. Hanging from the ruined stone above are dozens of tiny bells, each one different, each strung on faded ribbon or twine. When the wind catches just right, they whisper. The man beside you smiles. That's the part the scholars never write about. The bells. They ring when someone's sorrow gets lighter. He leans back on the stone. And don't worry, they ring when they're ready. You spend the rest of the hour there, watching the wind move through the ruins, feeling the scent of apple and ash wrap around you like a shawl. You don't cry and you don't speak. You don't need to. This is a place of listening, not just with ears, but with breath and body and memory. Eventually others begin to rise. They move slowly, respectfully, as though leaving a sleeping child. The woman with the braid presses her palm to the stone before standing. The man with the leather pouch leaves it behind, setting it near the edge of the pit. You follow them. As you step through the arch again, you glance back once, just as the wind picks up and the bells chime softly overhead. You smile, and in your heart something shifts. Not everything, just enough. You walk away from the sanctuary of the forgotten, with the hush of the bells still echoing softly in your chest. It's a sound not quite real, not entirely memory, but lodged somewhere between breath and heartbeat. The wind moves differently now, or perhaps it's just you who's changed. You notice its gentleness more, the way it curls around your wrists like silk, the way it lifts your collar like a mother's touch. The path brings you to the edge of the hills where stone gives way to soil and the smells of the town begin to fade. Here, the wild herbs reclaim the land. Time creeps between your steps. Clover winks from patches of moss, and scattered among the brush, almost as if planted by accident, are apple trees, feral cousins to the tended ones back in the orchard. Their trunks are rougher, the fruit smaller, more irregular, but when you pass beneath them, their scent is unmistakable. Sweet, sharp, ancient, like they've carried memory longer than most buildings. You pause beneath one particularly old tree, its limbs reaching sideways, almost horizontal, like arms stretching out to hold the sky. Carved into the bark are initials, faded by time, softened by growth. Someone long ago wanted to be remembered here. You touch the grooves gently, then sit beneath the shade. In the quiet that follows, something unexpected happens. You fall asleep. It's not a dramatic thing. You simply close your eyes for a moment, and the warmth, the apple scent, the lull of bird call and breeze all pull you under. And in your dreaming, you are elsewhere. You find yourself in a different time, same land but older. The hills are bare, the town a mere cluster of thatched roofs and wooden carts. There are no cathedrals yet, no noble crests, just people, simpler, perhaps, but just as heavy with thought and feeling. A healer walks among them, her satchel filled not with tinctures or tools, but fruit. Whole apples, dried slices, pressed cider in clay jugs. She stops at every door, handing them out like offerings. Sometimes she lingers, sometimes she sings. You drift closer. She kneels by the bedside of a man with sunken eyes and touches his forehead with apple-scented cloth. She doesn't speak. She simply lets the scent fill the room until even his laboured breath grows calm. You follow her down a lane where she meets a mother mourning a child. The woman sits on the ground, her arms empty, her hair loose and unwashed. The healer sits beside her and hands her a bundle of dried peel and marjoram wrapped in a child's old tunic. The mother presses it to her face and cries for a long time. But she doesn't push the healer away. And then, this part your dream doesn't show fully, you see her leave apples in strange places, behind a barn, beneath a window, in the pocket of a cloak left drying on a fence. No one sees her. But later, someone will find them, and maybe, just maybe, that scent will be the thing that stops the thoughts from spiralling. In the dream, you ask, why apples? And the healer answers, because grief travels through the air, and so must comfort. You wake slowly, the real world filtering back into your awareness, the rustle of leaves, the stretch of sunlight across your lap, the faint imprint of bark behind your back. You smile softly. You feel the trace of that dream still clinging to your skin, like fog before it lifts. It's afternoon now, and you rise gently, careful not to disturb the peace of the place. The path down the hill takes you into a new part of town where the buildings are smaller and the streets narrower. Here the cobblers and weavers live, the blacksmith, the potters. You pass a small shop whose windows are cluttered with glass bottles. Inside, a boy stirs something in a copper pot, watched closely by an older man who might be his father or his teacher. They both wear aprons stained with resin and herbs. You see a bowl of apples on the windowsill, some halved and drying, some already peeled. The scent wafts into the street, inviting and warm. You keep walking, passing more homes where apple hangs in the air like a memory of something kind. You hear two women talking on a stoop, one holding a bundle wrapped in linen, the other nodding solemnly. You catch only a few words as you pass, tied it with rosemary, just like her mother used to. But it's enough to know they're talking about more than herbs. Eventually, the path carries you to a quiet stretch along the riverbank, where stone seats have been carved into the embankment. You settle into one and let your eyes follow the curve of the water. The river here is slow-moving, thick with reflection. A pair of ducks drift lazily across its surface. Somewhere downstream a bell chimes the passing hour. And in this moment you begin to realize something. The apple in this world is more than a fruit, it's a language. It says, I see you. It says, you are not forgotten. It says, this weight will not break you. It says, sit, rest, breathe. In a world that so often rushes, demands, and hurries sorrow away, this one has chosen something gentler. It has built rituals not around fixing, but around witnessing. And sometimes that is the truest form of healing. As you sit by the river, you recall the convent's warm sachet, the orchard's quiet boy, the circle of stones and its fire-sweet air, the elder who told you grief rings bells when it lightens, and you begin to understand the apple's magic lies not in science or legend or medicine alone. It lies in the way people offer it, softly, repeatedly, without condition, without hurry. It is presence distilled. The river whispers beside you, the breeze pulls lightly at your sleeves. Somewhere someone is baking, somewhere else someone is remembering, and somewhere else again someone is weeping into an apple-scented cloth, and all of it is held. You press your palms together and close your eyes, not in prayer exactly, but in stillness. And for now, that is enough. The afternoon light tilts now, slanting across the river in ribbons of gold. The water shimmers with slow ripples that look like they've forgotten how to rush. Your body too has learned that rhythm of stillness, of softness, of breath that doesn't race ahead of itself. You sit a while longer by the bank until the shadows deepen just slightly and the cool begins to hint at evening. You rise gently and make your way back toward the heart of the town. The streets are calmer now. The earlier clatter of morning commerce has given way to the hush of the day's slowing. Shopkeepers sweep thresholds. Market stalls close their shutters. A few children play marbles near a water trough, their laughter carrying like birdsong across the stone. But your path veers not toward the marketplace, nor toward the church tower casting long shadows over the rooftops. No, you follow a winding alley lined with old beams and ivy-covered chimneys until you reach a door painted a deep, dusky green. There's no sign, only a small etching on the wood above, an apple pierced by a single feather. You knock softly. A woman opens the door. She's older, though her presence is timeless. Her eyes are like dusk, gentle, watchful, full of stories she doesn't rush to tell. She smiles at you as if she expected you at this precise moment. You step into a room that is not quite shop, not quite apothecary, not quite home, but some alchemy of all three. It smells of beeswax and clove, of parchment and soft linen, and, underneath it all, that ever-familiar note of apple. But different this time. Not raw, not spiced, not baked. This apple scent is aged, deeper, like cider left to think for a while. The room is lit by candles. Shelves line the walls, filled not with wares, but with objects arranged with intention. Tiny jars, pieces of driftwood, old coins, smooth stones, paper packets sealed with wax and twine. The woman gestures for you to sit by the hearth, where a low fire crackles and fills the room with warmth that seems to seep directly into your bones. She sits opposite you and begins to stir a pot hanging above the flame. It contains no stew, no tea, only slices of apple simmering slowly in water, with thin curls of orange peel and a pinch of crushed petals floating on the surface. The scent is neither sharp nor sweet, but quiet. "I'm what you might call a listener," she says, though you didn't ask. You glance up. "There are those who heal with hands, those who heal with herbs, those who heal with prayers, and then there are those who listen until the pain reshapes itself." She spoons some of the apple broth into a cup and hands it to you. It is warm, not hot, and tastes faintly of sleep and memories. You sip slowly, feeling it settle in your chest like the first full breath after weeping. "No one ever asks why apple became the symbol," she continues. "Not really. They just accept it. Like breath, like dusk." She leans back and folds her hands in her lap. "But I'll tell you if you'd like." You nod slowly. "The apple," she says, "is a fruit of contradiction. It is both sweet and tart, both nourishment and temptation. It bruises easily, and yet it preserves well. It's eaten raw, baked, dried, fermented. It holds water, scent, and memory." She reaches for a dried apple ring from a small bowl and holds it between her fingers. Our ancestors noticed these things, and so they gave it meaning. They said, "If grief lives in layers, so must the cure." She sets the apple slice down on a bit of cloth embroidered with stars, and so apple became our language of layering. We dry it, we crush it, we warm it, we smell it. Each version speaks a different dialect of care. You feel the truth in that, not just as a listener, but as someone whose heart has learned to respond to the smallest kindnesses. She asks you softly, "What layer of grief are you in?" You think, you answer slowly. "The kind that doesn't hurt constantly, just lingers." She nods, unsurprised. "Ah yes, the ghost layer. The one that lives behind your eyes, waiting for quiet moments." She leans forward and offers you a cloth bundle. "This is for that layer. Lavender for peace, cedar for strength, apple for memory, and myrrh for release." You hold it carefully. It's warm. She stands then and moves to a shelf, retrieving a book with a frayed spine. "Would you like a story?" she asks. You nod again. Something inside you knows the answer was always yes. She opens the book and begins to read, though her voice never rises above a hush. It's a tale of an old man who grew an apple tree in a graveyard, not to mark a loss, but to grow sweetness above sorrow. Each visitor to the grave was invited to take an apple, eat it under the sun, and speak the name of the one they missed. The tree grew heavy each year, until its apples became too many for the town to eat. And so the people pressed them into cider and poured a libation for every ancestor buried in the earth. The story ends quietly, with the tree still standing long after the man was gone, still offering its fruit to anyone who needed it. The woman closes the book. Stories, she says, are another kind of apple, a way to feed the parts of us that hunger for meaning. You finish the last of your apple broth and hand her the cup. She takes it with a nod and places it gently on the hearth. As you prepare to leave, she hands you a final gift, a slip of parchment folded into a square. Don't read it now, she says. Wait until you need it. You tuck it into your pocket. Outside, the sky has deepened into a soft mauve, and the first stars blink awake above the rooftops. The air is cooling. The scent of evening fires and baking and wood smoke curls through the town like a lullaby. You walk slowly, deliberately. Every window you pass glows with amber light. Every threshold bears something small, a candle, a bundle of herbs, a cloth sachet. You begin to realize that the town is one continuous ritual. Every home is part of the healing. Every alley holds a memory. You sit on a low wall beneath an old iron lamp. You take the parchment from your pocket and unfold it. There is only one line, written in a careful looping hand. You are not broken. You are growing around the ache. And somehow in the hush of evening, beneath that sentence, something inside you loosens. You close your eyes and you breathe. The lamp above you flickers gently, casting warm pools of light that dance across the cobblestones. The line on the parchment, "You are not broken, you are growing around the ache," still sits in your hand like a blessing too simple to be believed and too true to be denied. You fold it carefully and slip it back into your pocket, not out of habit, but reverence. The street is quiet now. The day has settled into itself, and the town exhales in long, slow rhythms. You rise from the wall and begin to walk with no destination, just moving, just being, carried by the hush of twilight. As you walk, you pass the little things, signs that the town has long understood how to live alongside grief, not in spite of it. A windowsill holds 3 apples, each with a name carved lightly into the skin. A child's chalk drawing on the wall includes a tree, a sun, and a face looking upward. Outside a shop door, a bowl of dried apple slices and cloves sits beneath a small hand-painted sign. For anyone who misses someone, no cost, no explanation. There's a deep comfort in this. Grief is not hidden here. It's not hushed or hurried or treated like a problem to solve. It is woven in, gently, lovingly. The apple is its symbol, not because it erases pain, but because it welcomes it like a guest, offers it warmth, sweetness, and a place to sit. You turn a corner and find yourself at the edge of the town's oldest quarter, where the buildings lean a little and the roofs dip like weary heads. Here, nestled between an old bakery and a stone wall covered in ivy, is a narrow stairway leading downward. Something draws you toward it. You descend slowly, one step at a time. The air cools. The sounds of the town fade behind you, muffled by the walls. At the bottom, an arched wooden door waits slightly ajar. Above it, carved into the lintel, the room of remembering. Inside, you find a small candle-lit chamber. Stone walls curve gently inward, making the space feel like a nest. A single wooden bench lines the wall, and at the centre of the room, a large, shallow bowl rests on a pedestal. It's filled not with water, but with finely shredded apple peel, dried marigold petals, and tiny fragments of parchment. A quiet man tends the bowl, using a carved wooden spoon to gently stir the mixture. He looks up as you enter and nods, neither surprised nor curious, just open. You sit, no one speaks. Time feels slower here, like it's padding softly on bare feet. You close your eyes and let your thoughts settle. When you open them, the man is holding out a small parchment square and a stub of charcoal. You take them, you hesitate. Not because you don't know what to write, but because you do. In slow, careful strokes, you write a sentence, just one. Something that needs to be remembered. Not a confession, not a secret, a truth. You fold the parchment and hand it to the man. He receives it with both hands, then places it gently into the bowl. The apple scent rises immediately, light, golden, a little sharp. He stirs once, then nods. That's it. No ritual, no commentary, no demands. Just this. You are here, and something you carried now lives outside you, suspended in apple and marigold. You leave the chamber with a lighter step. Not because anything has been erased, but because it has been seen. Outside, the night has arrived. The stars hang in the sky like quiet watchers. The town glows gently. No harsh lights, only lanterns and hearths, windows soft with amber warmth. You walk until you find yourself on a small bridge spanning the stream that once powered the old mill. The water beneath is dark, reflective, whispering against the stones. A young woman stands at the rail, holding something wrapped in cloth. She doesn't look at you, but she speaks softly. My brother used to send me dried apple slices every spring, even when we fought, even when we weren't speaking. I didn't understand until after he was gone. She unwraps the cloth. Inside is a thin bracelet woven of apple bark and red string. She sets it on the rail. I leave one here every year. She turns to you then, eyes tired but kind. Sometimes I think apples are how we remember the people we couldn't hold on to. We keep their scent around us. We taste their sweetness when the world goes bitter. And somehow they stay. You nod. She smiles gently, then walks away. You remain on the bridge, looking down at the bracelet. It moves slightly in the breeze, like it might take flight or dissolve into starlight. You take a breath and listen to the stream, the distant sounds of bells and laughter, the night's slow breathing. Eventually, you return to the inn, the same one you arrived at what now feels like days ago. Its shutters are closed, but soft light seeps from beneath them. Inside, the innkeeper greets you with a nod and gestures toward a kettle on the hearth. Apple tea, he says. On the house. You look like someone who's walked through something. You smile and thank him, pouring yourself a mug. The scent is comforting. Familiar by now. Like a tune you can hum without knowing where you learned it. You carry it upstairs to your room, lit by a single candle. You sit at the window and sip slowly, letting the warmth fill you. On the bedside table is the sachet from the convent. You press it to your face, inhaling deeply. Apple, lavender, balm. And in that moment you begin to feel something unexpected, not joy exactly, not resolution, but something close to peace. Like moss regrowing on a wound, like water learning how to hold sky, like a tree whose broken branch has started to bud again. You lie back on the bed, still holding the sachet, still cradling the scent in your chest. And just before sleep takes you, you whisper a single word into the dark. Thank you. Morning returns softly, almost without your noticing. You awaken not with a start, but with a slow blink, the kind that eases you back into the world rather than thrusting you into it. The room is still dim, with only a slip of golden light tracing the edge of the curtain. You remain still for a while, breathing in the lingering scent of apple, lavender, and faint smoke that has woven itself into the linens overnight. It's in your hair now too, in your breath, in your memory. When you rise, the sachet is still resting by your pillow. You pick it up, press it gently to your cheek once more, and smile without meaning to. It has grown softer somehow, as if the very act of sleeping beside it had loosened something tight. Downstairs, the innkeeper greets you with a fresh pot of the same apple tea, already steeping beside the fire. You stayed, he says with a kind of satisfied surprise, though it's not clear whether he's talking about your body, your mind, or your spirit. You nod, take the mug, and sit beside the hearth without words. A few other travellers murmur over their breakfasts. One is carving a shape into a wooden apple. Another is writing in a journal with long, looping strokes. There is no rush, no clatter of dishes, just the gentle sounds of spoons, turning pages, and soft breathing. It feels less like a morning in an inn and more like waking inside a shared dream. When you step outside, the town is already stirring, but the pace is never hurried here, more like a yawn, like stretching under a quilt. You make your way toward the square, which now holds a small open-air gathering, not a market, not quite a ceremony, something in between. At the centre, someone is arranging a table with items brought from homes around the town. You move closer and realise it's a collection, not of goods but of gestures. On the table are little pouches tied with twine, slices of dried apple, handwritten notes, bits of ribbon, twigs of rosemary, and even a few old coins wrapped in silk. Beside each is a tag bearing either a name, a date, or a single word, most of them too smudged or weathered to read clearly. The townspeople call it the table of offerings, and it is not for buying or selling, it's for remembering. A woman in a cloak approaches the table and places a small ceramic heart beside a slice of apple. She touches it for a moment, then walks away without explanation. Another man sets down a pair of woolen gloves, their fingertips stained with something like paint or ink. A child brings a feather and a pebble, solemn as a priest. You watch, then feel something shift inside your pocket. The parchment from the listener. You unfold it again. You are not broken. You are growing around the ache, and realize you aren't meant to keep it forever. You press it between two apple slices from a basket beside the table and leave it there, tucking it beneath a sprig of mint someone left behind. When you walk away, you feel lighter, not free of weight, but carried by something larger than you. You wander a little, letting the morning take you where it will, past the bakery with its sugared windows and warm spiced air, past the garden where a girl gently strings apple slices along twine, hanging them like paper lanterns to dry, past the shop that sells bundles of herbs and sachets sewn by quiet hands. Eventually you come upon a tiny cottage with an open door and a low wooden sign painted in quiet letters, House of Small Repairs. Inside, the room is filled not with tools or hardware, but stories. You're greeted by a man with ink-stained fingers and a voice like velvet. He gestures toward a table and says, "Bring what you carry." At first, you think he means something physical, but then you understand. You sit and place your palms on the wood. He listens, not to words, but to your breath, your pauses, the way your shoulders fall. Then he opens a small drawer and removes a blank card. On it, he draws a tree with apples growing from its branches, some whole, some bitten, some falling to the ground. He writes beneath it, "Some things are never fixed, only witnessed, and that is a form of repair." He hands you the card and you carry it with the kind of tenderness normally reserved for relics. Outside, the sky begins to shift again, late morning now, edging toward afternoon. The warmth has deepened, and the scent of apples seems to rise with the sun. It curls around corners, drifts from windows, lingers in the air like a whisper from the past. You decide to return to the orchard, not for a ritual, not for remembrance, just to be there. As you walk back through the eastern paths, past the stone markers and moss-covered walls, you begin to hear something in the distance, quiet song hummed rather than sung. You follow it until you reach the edge of the orchard. And there they are, a circle of women, old and young, seated beneath the largest apple tree. One strums a lyre, another threads apple slices onto a ribbon. A few simply sit with eyes closed, hands resting on their knees. You ask if you may join, and they welcome you with space. You sit, you breathe. The song continues, not with words, but with memory. It's a lullaby in the truest sense, meant not to put you to sleep, but to soothe the part of you that never fully wakes. Someone offers you an apple. You hold it in your hands and press it to your chest. It's warm from the sun, its skin smooth and dappled. You take a bite, and in that bite you taste everything. Bitterness from what you've lost, sweetness from what remains, crispness from the air of this place, and something soft at the end, a memory you didn't know you still had. You close your eyes and chew slowly. A breeze moves through the orchard. And once again the bells, those soft, suspended chimes you'd heard before, begin to ring, barely audible over the hum of bees and the rustling of leaves. One woman leans toward you and says, "They say the bells only ring when someone lets go just a little." You smile, because maybe that's what this whole journey has been. Not forgetting, not replacing, just loosening the grip and letting breath return to places where it had gone still. Letting your name rejoin the sound of the world. Letting the ache grow roots, and from it something green. Something sweet and something alive. The apple you were given rests in your hand now, only half eaten. You turn it slowly in your palm, watching the light shift across its skin. That bite you took earlier wasn't just food. It was memory. It was understanding. It was release. Not a grand gesture, but the quiet kind, the kind that's only visible if you're really paying attention. And now, sitting under this tree, everything starts to feel connected. Not in a poetic way, but in the way a body feels all its bones working together when it stretches for the first time in a long time. You think of the scent in the convent, the dried apple in the fire pit, the sachet on your pillow, the carved initials in the bark, the tea in the innkeeper's mug. You close your eyes, and then you open your hands, not because you're holding anything, but because you no longer need to. You stay like that for a long time. Eventually a small child wanders by, chasing a drifting dandelion seed. They stop and glance at you, then at your apple, then point to the branch above your head. "Those ones are better," they whisper, as if it's a secret. You look up. Higher up the tree, among the uppermost branches, a cluster of smaller apples glint in the sunlight, less perfect in shape, speckled, wind-bruised perhaps, but somehow richer in colour. You nod solemnly. The child giggles and darts off after the next breeze. You rise from your seat and begin to walk the orchard's edge, where the grass grows taller and the trees space themselves out more widely. Here the air feels less cultivated, more wild. You let your fingers trail through the tall blades as you move. You're not following a path now, you're simply following the pull of the place. And then you find it. Nestled at the base of a tree that has nearly split in two is a tiny shrine. It's nothing grand, just a stone circle barely knee-high, with objects arranged carefully in the centre. A faded ribbon, a small wooden bird, a slice of dried apple threaded with a piece of blue yarn. But beside it, propped gently against a root, is a leather-bound journal. Weathered, but intact. You kneel and open it. The pages are filled with handwriting, not one hand, but many. Some large and round, others tiny and delicate. Some slanted, some barely legible. Each page is a memory, or a message, or a name, a line of poetry, a recipe, a confession, a story only a single person could tell. One page reads, "He always brought me apples after my nightmares. I never told him they worked, but they did." Another. "When she left, I planted a tree from the core. It still stands." Another, just 4 words. "I remember. That's enough." You trace your fingers along the edges of the paper, amazed by how many hearts had left a little of themselves here. And for the first time you understand, this place is not just about grief or healing or sleep. It's about continuity. You turn to a blank page, and you write, not for closure, not for performance, but as a way of placing your breath alongside theirs. The ache no longer frightens me. It belongs. It grows something. You sign with your initials and date, then close the journal and return it to the root where it lay. As you stand to leave, a wind passes through the orchard again, and for a moment, every tree seems to sway together, like a great body exhaling. The scent of apples lifts and carries, brushing over you in waves. The town is quieter now as you return. The bells have stopped, the market is closed, and the sky has begun its slow turn toward dusk once more. You walk past all the familiar markers, the convent garden, the alley of ivy, the bridge where someone once left a bracelet. This time, you don't feel like a visitor. You feel like part of the place. At the inn, the fire is still burning and the innkeeper looks up with a knowing nod. You don't speak. You don't need to. You climb the stairs slowly, body softened by everything you've walked through. In your room, the candle is already lit. The sachet still rests by the pillow, its scent now part of the fabric of the room. You sit by the window one last time, sipping the last of your apple tea, watching as stars begin to thread themselves across the sky. And then you prepare for rest. You lie down, wrapping yourself in the warmth of the sheets and the hum of memory. Your body feels heavier, in a good way, as though it has finally let itself be held by the earth beneath it. Your limbs loosen, your breath deepens. The quiet in your mind is no longer empty. It is full of softness, full of knowing. Outside, the night continues without urgency, and as your eyes grow heavier, you find yourself holding on to one final thought, not with fear, but with calm. Grief may never leave entirely, but neither will kindness, neither will apple-scented evenings or stories whispered under trees, or strangers who sit in silence beside you just to let your ache breathe. Neither will the way your body remembers softness, or the way, when you loosen your grip on sorrow, it becomes a seed, and seeds become trees, and trees become orchards, and orchards carry us home. And now, dear listener, the story has slowed to its softest breath. The orchard sleeps behind you, its roots deep, its branches quiet. The last of the apples ripen in silence, untouched, unhurried. The town is still, save for a few flickering windows and the faint sound of footsteps fading into dreams. Even the river moves slower now, as if it too is settling in for the night. You lie beneath your covers, wrapped not only in warmth but in memory. In the journey you've taken, not only through streets and orchards and stories, but through something more delicate, your own heart. Beneath all the places you've walked, the bells you've heard, the soft hands that handed you apples or offered you silence, you are learning to rest. Not just sleep, but true rest. The kind where the mind doesn't chase or brace or worry. The kind where sorrow is not erased, but gently held. Let yourself settle now. Let the echoes of the apples linger. Let the kindnesses stay folded against your ribs, quiet and alive. You've earned this stillness. Tonight the ache does not win. The ache is simply part of the landscape, like hills in the distance, like wind through leaves, like the smell of apples drifting from a window that stays open just for you. You are not broken. You are becoming. And now, slowly, softly, let go. Sleep well, traveller. You made it.